Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Before I get started, I like to start this in a little non-traditional way. I want to find out why you guys are here. What about ethnobotany? What drove you to come and attend today's presentation? You can shout it out or you can raise your hand. Please, yeah. You want to know what it is? All right, cool. That's the one reason. You, sir.
I figured I might save his life one day if I know how to survive.
Yeah. Knowing the plants around you here, definitely. Anyone else? No?
I want to hear more about the plants themselves.
The plants of the desert? Okay, awesome. My name is Alex La Pierre. I'm the director of Borderlandia. We're a binational organization committed to building public understanding. My better half's back there. She's filming. We have a 10-month-old baby, so usually she doesn't make an appearances, so if you want to ask for her autograph afterwards, you can too as well. So cool, let's get this started. So to kind of give you an idea of where we're going to go with this presentation, first we're going to do a definition, start with the bare basics. What is it? We're going to look at plants and human relationships, particularly in the Sonoran Desert. And then we're going to look at 6 different plants. I mean, this is the introduction. I wish I could go through 40 different plants for you, but there's already about 70 slides. So I think we're just going to stick with 4 today just to get started, more or less. The 4 plants are going to be elderberry, creosote, chiltepine, saguaro, a couple wild cards here, arrow poison plant, and Sonoran white wheat too. The last 2 are wild cards, okay? I love this image. This is one of the first depictions of any indigenous person in the Sonoran Desert. This is a depiction that was actually on a map. It was a contemporary of Father Kino, one of the few other priests that were in this area in the 1600s. Padre Gil, he depicted the Seri tribe. And the Seri tribe still live to this day along the coast of the Sea of Cortez. They're probably one of the few indigenous groups today that are still living by what the desert gives them and by what the sea gives them, the Sea of Cortez to this day. So really unique. You can even see the pitaya in the background, the organ pipe cactus, which they would have leveraged for both the fruit, but also to brew alcoholic beverages too as well. So ethnobotany, breaking down, it's a study of how people in a particular culture and region use indigenous plants, and it explores that relationship between humans and plants, particularly in the ways in which they're used for food, medicine, tools and materials, textiles and dyes, ceremonial and spiritual practices. Those are the main uses that we're going to look at for that. Ethnobotanists typically work very closely with indigenous communities in order to document this traditional ecological knowledge that's passed down through generations. That's how it's basically found out, is through trial and error over the generations, and how to cultivate, harvest, and respect plants sustainably. And at its core, it bridges, a botanical science with cultural anthropology. That's really what ethnobotany is. And here in the Sonoran Desert, as Grace was alluding to, there's a great sign in Organ Pipe National Monument. It has a quote from a Saudi Arabian prince. It was his first time landing in the Sonoran Desert. When he looked out in the Sonoran Desert for the first time, he said, "This isn't a desert. This is a garden." And it really is. It's the world's wettest desert and the most biodiverse desert on the planet. And because of that, we have a kind of a larger array of plants from which humans can utilize from. Some of the iconic plants that we all know, they have been essential. These plants have been essential to their survival in such an arid climate, really, because they've been used for shelter, for tools, for food. You have to also look at the indigenous knowledge systems. There's many different indigenous tribes here in the Sonoran Desert. The Opata, there's 2 different kinds of Atam. The Atam that would have lived right here in Tubac would have been known today as the Akimel Atam. They're the riverine Atam. Nowadays, you think the Akimel are up there in Phoenix. That's because they were the Gila River Pima. But there's a reason why there's a separate district of San Javier that's detached from the main Tohono O'odham nation. That's because they're the Sobaipuris. They're the riverine O'odham. They're not the western desert O'odham. They're the ones that develop sustainable harvesting techniques and the seasonal calendars that would inform them on when were the best times to pick these different plants. And then also, something important to emphasize is this reciprocal relationships and also harvesting sustainably too. If you've ever read, Gun Germs and Steels by Jared Diamond, you know how many cultures have failed by not managing resources properly. Case in point, Easter Island there in the South Pacific. And nowadays, this field is more important because there's threats. There's urbanization, there's climate change, cultural loss. They all threaten to have us lose these ethnobotanical traditions. And so these efforts by ethnobotanists and indigenous people to document these traditional knowledges are so important. Okay, so now we're going to go into looking at some of these Sonoran Desert plants here that we can get ethnobotanical uses. And this is one, if we were just to walk down this road right here, the old El Camino Real, we'd run into one within a couple of yards of here of elderberry. It's usually the first plant to green up after the winter frost. I love this quote. This is from Padre Juan Nenfig, one of the early Jesuit priests here. He says, "The Mexican elder is a fairly common tree in both Pimerías. From its berries, the Altos make a beverage so potent that those who drink it to excess get so drunk that it takes up to 2 or 3 days to sober up. Believing that such a vice is the cause of many evils, the missionaries have tried unsuccessfully to stop the Indians to making it." They were showing up to mass hungover, basically. So the Jesuits were like, "No, we don't want this." They were making elderberry wine that we know many cultures throughout the world also do. This is how the plant looks. This is the Latin name, Sambucus mexicana. It's a drought deciduous shrub or small tree, meaning that in response to lack of water, it can lose some of its leaves, not just like, how we think about the eastern forest, they lose their leaves because of the frost. It's the opposite way around. They're native to the Southwest in Mexico, and it's almost riparian obligate, meaning that it needs to be close to some sort of water source, and so that's why you typically find them down in the river areas, like the Santa Cruz River down here. They bloom from spring to summer, and they have the cream-colored flowers, which is also utilized, and then the dark blue blackberries, and they almost kind of have like this little kind of like powder on them when they're really ready and ripe. There's the flowers too, which Scandinavian countries, they'll make the elderberry tea. They provide important nectar for pollinators. The berries feed the birds and the mammals, and also they help stabilize the riparian zone with their roots. It's a drought tolerant and fire resistant, so really made for the Sonoran Desert. Right now is the ideal time to harvest the berries. So if you were to go down there and grab some, it's ideal now because you can get the rains. June 24th, the day of St. John the Baptist, the guy who dunked people in water, that's our traditional start date of the monsoon season. And so it's typically in June that you want to start collecting these berries. They're a traditional food source. That's what the main thing is used for humans, the human relationship, cooked into jams, wines, syrups. The flowers are used for teas or fritters, and it's harvested seasonally by both. It's pretty popular in both the autumn and Yaqui worlds. Here you can see the processing. You need to process it. The raw berries, if you eat a lot of them, they can be toxic if they're not prepared properly. You have to always cook them, and there you can see that they're straining the seeds out of them as well. I ran into this dish actually about 10 years ago. I came here about 10 years ago working for the National Park Service just down the road at Tumacacori National Historical Park. And I'd always have breakfast and lunch with my coworkers, and I was the only Anglo. They're all Mexican Americans. And one morning, one of the workers brought in this dish, and I asked him what it was, and he said it's like oatmeal. And so we can really say that here in the Santa Cruz Valley, River Valley, to this day, they're still making a dish with at least a 500-year pedigree here in the region. This is basically like American oatmeal, but for Sonora is atole de tapiro. Atoles, they're typically corn porridges or corn drinks, beverages, depending on the thickness. And one of the most typical ones that you would find here was the tapiro, which means elderberry. So a very traditional food in these river valleys of southern Arizona and northern Sonora. The elderberry is a vital part of Sonoran Desert life, sustaining ecosystems, nourishing people, and preserving cultural knowledge passed through the generations. And this woman I've met, she's in Altar River Valley. She processes it to make the atoles, but also she mainly processes it for the wine. This is a picture of me out in front of the Okitoa sign, and in Mexico you go to the different towns. They usually have the names out there, and usually they decorate the letters based on the culture of the town. And so there on the eye they have the elderberry vino de tapiro, and there am I with the local specialty. So it's still being made today in the Altar River Valley. So you often hear the Altar River Valley in the bad news about the narcos, but there is good news coming out of there too. They're making some delicious wine. Another plant that you guys will be familiar with, we actually have a specimen right here at the Tubac Presidio, even though it's not native to this area. If you look around here at Tubac's elevation, we're at 3,300, 200 feet. You won't see a single saguaro. You won't see a single creosote bush, except for the few ones that are planted over there. That's because these plants are very frost-sensitive plants, and so they don't grow at these elevations. And so one way to know your elevation or know what kind of desert you're in is to look. If you see the saguaros and the creosote, you know you're in the lower Sonoran Desert, 2,000 elevation like Tucson. If you don't see them anymore, 3,000, 4,000, you're going up into the Sky Islands, right? Like you get down to Nogales, it's 4,000 feet in elevation. You don't find open saguaro forest, you find open oak forest at that elevation, okay? The scientific name is Laurea tridentada. It kind of looks like a trident. You can kind of see there as well. In Shugay in Atam language, there's different dialects basically, but the fact that it's in the two dialects, it shows you the widespread use of this plant by the Atam. This is a great image. It shows you the floration and then the seed, the production of the seed there. It's known by the name greasewood, chaparral, and in Spanish as gobernadora or hediondilla. Hediondilla means stinky one. Gobernadora means like the governess, because after it rains, the scent governs the whole area, right? It's a waxy green leaves, and they have the small yellow flowers and then the fuzzy white seed capsules, the fruit. Okay, here you can see the pretty widespread range of the creosote, pretty much almost from central Mexico all the way up to Utah. Some clonal colonies are estimated to be 11,000 years old. And look at this one. This is one of the oldest things alive on the planet. It's 11,000 years old, over 11,000 years old. They propagate in a ring fashion in the desert, and so that's how it's that old. It can survive extreme droughts through deep root systems and water retention in resinous leaves. Have you ever touched the leaves of the creosote? It has almost that lacquer. That lacquer helps the moisture stay inside the plant and not be evaporated. It's mainly a medicinal plant, so this is where the ethnobotanical part comes in. It's anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. Leaf infusions have been used to treat colds, fever, stomach cramps, and poultices for arthritis, wounds, and skin infections. It could even be applied to athletes' feet as well. So if you go to the U of A game, maybe you'll see them with the creosote. No. Respiratory leaf. Also, yeah, if you ever smelled that steam, if you get a steam breath, you can boil it up and put a cloth over the bath there for sinus and chest congestion. The resin's used as an antiseptic or salve too. It's a traditional deodorant and hair wash among desert tribes, and it's even an insect repellent as well. So you have to be careful though. It does have some properties, NDGA, which can be, it's like if you just take it at like an extreme amount of it, it can be toxic to the liver. And it's recommended that you seek professional guidance before you actually ingest it as well. There's no relation between this plant and the railroad ties. That's basically a wood preservation agent. That's petroleum based. It's from oil. Okay. Chiltepin, everybody's favorite, right? And we're so great to kind of present this because just on the other side of the freeway here is the only wild chili botanical preserve in the United States that protects the northernmost wild populations of this chiltepine. There you can see the name. It's the variance is the Glaberisculum, the wild spice of the Sonoran Desert. Chiltepine, chili tepine, bird pepper. It's not chili pekin. If you want a chili pekin, go to Texas and you could stay there, okay? It's the chili pekin is the pointed one. This is the round, small one, basically. It's the wild ancestor of all modern chilies. So think of, the habanero, the poblano, the Hungarian wax pepper. It all came from this wild format ancestor. So, over the generations, people saved certain seeds for certain qualities. They saved the biggest chiltepines, eventually got the poblano for stuffing, or they saved the spiciest chiltepines, eventually got the habanero, right? It usually just grows about 1 or 4 feet. I've got one in my house that's probably about 4 feet tall. It's almost my height now, so it's pretty max. It's like a little bushy shrub. It likes those nursery plants, so that's often where you find it, is in that partial sunlight when it's growing in the wild, under hackberry or mesquite. And it's used in all sorts of cuisine, salsas, stews, spice blends, key ingredient in Sonoran and autumn cooking. It's known for its intense smoky heat despite its small size, and the Scoville is between 50 and 100,000. What I really like about the chiltepine, it's not like habanero where you just have a little dab of it and you're chugging the milk gallon for the rest of the day, What I like about this is that, it's like a nuclear blast when you taste it, but it has a relatively quick dissipation, and it has that beautiful smoky edge too. It's also used by indigenous groups as a remedy for colds, stomach ailments, and to stimulate circulation. Sometimes it was mixed with herbs or used in teas. And also for ceremonial use, it was used to ward off evil spirits or invoke strength as well. So the bird is the preferred method of dispersal. The reason why is obviously the range, but also it helps with the scarification of the seed to pass through the acidic digestive tract of the bird to increase its rates of germination, more or less. And so sometimes if you grow chiltepines on your own, sometimes they say the night before you plant them, or put a bunch of orange juice and let them sit in orange juice overnight to mimic the acidity of the bird's digestive system too. Overharvest and habitat loss threaten wild populations. It's protected in Sonora as an ecological and cultural treasure, and its revival in autumn communities have been part of traditional food sovereignty movements. In fact, the price, I think it's after saffron as far as expense goes, because it's almost exclusively wild harvested. It hasn't been domesticated at a point where it's being commercially grown, and so that's what's affecting the price of the product, more or less. And so this is what the wild chili botanical area is called. It's called Tumacacari. It was established in 1999. We have the Rock Corral Ranch man here, Dr. Bill Neubauer, who gave it to the Coronado National Forest, accessioned the land so that they would have that to protect there in Tumacacari. And so it's great that they have the chili company and they're promoting chilies. Oh, there's Jeannie there too. I didn't even see Jeannie there too. The two of them there are there. So wonderful. Alrighty, the iconic plant of the Sonoran Desert. There's that Carnegie name, Giganti. It's a Sonoran Desert native. It's the most iconic one, thrives here. It can live up to 200 years. It grows up to 40 feet tall, and the arms first appear at around age 50. It shapes the landscape and ecosystem. Look at this one right here. This is in Saguaro National Park with this guy down here for a frame of reference. Here you can see the range map. I mean, it goes into California. It goes down barely into Sinaloa. It's actually, the range is pushing south because we're losing tropical, dry tropical forest here. So actually the range is pushing into the subhumid tropical parts of Mexico here as well. But you can see in almost 4 different states, Baja California, Sonora, California, and Arizona is the range. Mainly used for fruit. The autumn harvest of sweet fruit right around this time. One of the coolest days working down at Tumacacari was when we got a call up from Saguaro National Park, And they're like, hey, we need some help with the saguaro cactus fruit harvest. And we're like, oh, okay, we'll help you out. And so we got to go out there and we got to learn from the Atam. They have the tradition there at Saguaro Park West. And so they gave me one of the famous guipods, as they call them. The guipod is 2 long saguaro cactus ribs that they've latched together, and then there's like a crucifix at the end, a small little cross, and they use that to nick off the fruit, basically. And then typically there's people there with baskets to catch the fruit, more or less. This way you can do it with nicking it off. The organ pipe, on the other hand, what you see the people harvest it with looks more like a bayonet in Sonora. That's because if you were to nick that fruit off and it were to fall, the organ pipe is a lot more delicate of a fruit than the saguaro is. So the saguaro, you can nick it off with the cross at the top and then catch it with the basket, but you couldn't do that with the organ pipe fruit, more or less. The fruit's used fresh, dried, or turned into syrups, jams, and fermented beverages. The seeds are nutritious, and they're often ground into flour as well. It's important to also highlight that this is a ceremonial act too, the saguaro harvest. And what they do with the fruit is they mainly brew it for the wine. And the wine, the saguaro cactus wine, they brew in clay pots. And they drink the wine ceremoniously to request the monsoon rains to come every year. So that's why this is an important tradition for them. But not only food, we talked about them making the ribs as the instrument to harvest the actual fruit too. But if you go to some of the old houses in Tucson and even some here, you'll see that this is being used as a building material, a traditional building material. In fact, down at Tumacacri, they have a small recreated dwelling, indigenous dwelling called a miraki. Mirak in Ata means ocatillo, ki means house. It's literally ocatillo house. But also there, the lace in a lot of the roofing materials are that lighter saguaro ribs that they can use it to. And also, if you look at some of the old houses in the Sonoran Barrio Viejo, the Sonoran row houses, you also find them too. And of course, the beautiful Tri-State or the crested saguaro. It results from this abnormal, it's basically like an abnormal growth in plants called fasciation. Here you can see it in a mule ear wildflower. So it's not just the saguaro that has this abnormal growth pattern as well. The saguaro here in the state, many of you know, is legally protected to prevent overharvesting. It provides shelter and food for many desert animals. Of course, the nest. You guys have maybe seen the saguaro boots too. After the saguaro cactus dies, there's always the boot because that's that scarified area where the animal was living inside of the cactus. It's a keystone species. And I love this picture because this shows you almost 100 years later how much saguaros we've lost in almost a century. This is Saguaro Park East. Most of these are thought to have died in severe frost, but also climate change too. The more and more higher temperatures, the less likely that the saguaros are going to germinate and come to fruition underneath those understory plants too, just like the chiltepin. And there's that beautiful white creamy flower, our state flower for our state. So this is the wild card for you here. Have you ever heard of the Mexican jumping bean? That funny little, most of growing up, you buy a little box, your parents would give it to you as a little toy. Well, this is actually a Sonoran Desert plant. But what they won't tell you about this plant is that the sap is highly toxic. It'll kill a human. And the Indians employed this to big effect, particularly with the Spanish. And so the name, it's formally, the Latin name, the scientific name that it's formally been known is Sebastiana bilocularis, but now it's kind of being known by this name right here. But in Sonora, you'll hear it actually be called hierba de la flecha. It's literally arrow herb poison plant. And it's also known as the Mexican jumping bean or the Arizona jumping bean. There's a moth that will pollinate and lay their eggs in there. It's a multi-stem shrub. It can grow up to 6 meters tall, so quite tall, and it's uniquely reproductive almost throughout its entire year. It's southwestern Arizona, so pretty much you can find it quite a bit in Organ Pipe National Monument, but all the way down to Guaymas, the Yaqui River, and then east into the Sierra Madres too as well. There you can see the seeds. The main Mexican jumping bean plant is this plant right here, Sebastiana paviona. But they're also, this one's also parasited by a moth too, and also sold as Mexican jumping beans there too. There's that poisonous latex of the sap of the plant that was used by the indigenous people. And this is a great quote. This is from Baltasar Obregon. He was a member and chronicler of the Francisco de Ibarra expedition in 1565. He says the natives are reluctant to approach this tree to extract the milky sap due to the harm it can cause. And due to their caution, they will hurl rocks at the tree from a distance, and afterward, in the milk from which they dip their arrows from the injury. They take advantage of the fallen branches and throw them into the rivers and streams, ponds, lakes, and kill fish as they kill wild game. That dies a short time after ingesting the liquid and milky sap, or even the water near the branch. Hardly any other weed or tree will grow underneath its shadow. Its leaves do not change or shed like other trees. So you can use it was a fishing lure or stupefaction, right? Apparently, too, when Coronado was coming up to find the 7 cities of silver, he actually took a route back down to Mexico that was different from his original one because he didn't want to run into the poison-tipped arrows down here in Sonora, more or less. In fact, on his way up, he leaves a small settlement of conquistadors, kind of like a halfway house in the Rio Sonora region. Diego de Alcaraz is placed in command of the garrison as the expedition continues on. But eventually they got into trouble, and they incited a reaction from the local Opata people who attacked with their poison-dipped arrows. And the use of this chemical warfare is what the Spanish attributed to their defeat there. And actually, they had to move this little fort 3 times. And Denny Seymour, she actually did a presentation here. She has found the 3rd iteration of this fort just east of Nogales, Arizona. She found the smoking gun, which was literally the oldest firearm found in North America, right here in our backyard. So it has to do with the poison arrows. And right there, right pretty close to where the site was, Guavavi Mission, that's the oldest European ruins in the state. The first commander here of the Tubac Presidio, he's buried in the nave of the church, right next, pretty close to Anza's mother. But Balderrame, the reason why he died was a poison-tipped arrow nicked him in the neck. And that's how Anza became the commander here, basically. So no poison-tipped arrow, maybe no Anza story. And so there's those drawings of the Seris. And, you know, the Seris kind of kept the Spanish out of the west part of Sonora for a long, long time. I mean, there was a lack of rivers, but they never were able to put their thumb down on them because they were more of they weren't sedentary people. They walked and wandered as the desert gave stuff, right? And of course, the poison-tipped arrows. So this is the last wild card, which you wouldn't think an introduced food here would be an ethnobotanical food, but there's a reason why I'm including it, and the reason why it is an ethnobotanical food here. There's the Latin name. It's the heritage grain of the Southwest, the white Sonora wheat. It thrives in the Sonoran Desert's dry winters. It's drought and disease resistant. It's adapted to arid climates, and it's planted in the fall, and it overwinters and harvests in early summer. That's the most important point there. So when the Spanish were leaving, the missionaries were leaving subhumid tropical Mexico behind, and they started entering the relatively dry Sonoran Desert, they noticed something very unique here, that the winters here were perfect for growing a winter crop of wheat. And what that did was transform food security forever in the Sonoran Desert. Why? Because before the arrival of the Europeans, the indigenous only had one harvest a year. The 3 sisters, right? The corn, the beans, the squash. And you plant in the spring, and if you're lucky, if you get the rains, you harvest in the fall. But what if the rains don't come, right? You're resorting to a whole category of foods the Indians knew as starvation foods, right? You know, the roots, the bark, whatever they could just to get until the next season of foods. And so by bringing in the wheat, they basically leveled up the agricultural year, right? Right when they're barely starting to plant their 3 sisters in the spring, that's when you're harvesting the winter wheat of crop. And that's why, you know, here, you know, people will try to tell you that wheat tortillas aren't authentic Mexican. It's BS. They are authentic Mexican. They're authentic to Sonora and Chihuahua, the north here. It's because wheat suffers from rust diseases in subhumid tropical Mexico, and so that's why it just took off here, more or less. This is the wheat introduced by the Spanish missionaries here, but it was introduced to Spain from North Africa by the Moors. This is when you turn around a package of durum, that's the durum wheat that you see on the pasta packages. This is the wheat of the hardtack that they would cross the Atlantic voyages with as well. They cite 1690 as Father Kino coming into this area, bringing wheat here. But wheat may have come even early as 1540. They suspect that the naval arm of the Coronado expedition, Alarcon expedition, he goes up the delta of the Colorado River and lands in Yuma, and he gives seeds to the Indians. So there's talk about how they already had melon seeds and wheat seeds by the time Kino arrives too. And the reason why I tell you that this is an ethnobotanical food is because you know it's an indigenous food when the indigenous people have given their own name in their own indigenous language to the food. It's not a derivative of Spanish. They've given their own name to this food. There you can see it right down at the bottom of this thing. Pilcan is the autumn word of wheat, which is interesting to note, not a derivative of trigo. And so that's how I tell you that this food, they don't consider foreign food anymore. They consider their own. And not only that, the wheat became so important here that we basically prevented the Civil War from starving during the later years of 1864 and 1865. Some of the first agribusiness in the state of Arizona were the Gila Pima that sold wheat back east to the Confederate and the Union forces. And Anza, when he was headed out to California, they only talk about one expedition, but he did a scouting expedition before the colonizing expedition. And on his way back on the scouting expedition, he goes down the Gila River. And he could see from one side of the valley to the other side of the valley, just pure golden fields of wheat. And that's important to tell you because the Gila River was beyond the Spanish influence. And this tells you that they weren't forcing these new Spanish foods on the Indians. No, they wanted these foods. And we know Kino. Why did Kino show up here in Tumacacri and Tubac? Because messengers from the Indian village of Tumacacri and the Indian village of Bach, they heard about these mysterious black robe medicine men in the south that were bringing things. They were bringing fruit trees. They were bringing the wheat. They're bringing the chickens and the pigs. Guess what they wanted? They wanted all of that. And so messengers from these Indian villages came down to Kino and his counterpart, and they come with gifts of food, arcs of flowers, gifts of crucifix, to request him found a mission in the community of Tumacacri and San Javier. Why? Because they wanted what they were bringing. They leaned into this food diplomacy of the Jesuits, and they never went where they weren't invited. So it was originally used for the communion bread, but also wheat was a very important for Spanish identity. They needed to eat wheat for identity. And now it's become a cornerstone of our cuisine. Not only that, but in Otom language, the word for tortilla isn't a derivative of tortilla. It's chemith, too. So even the word tortilla, which they wouldn't have made before the arrival of the Spanish, it's their own word in their own indigenous language. Okay? This is the famous tortillas sobaqueras that are in Sonora. You won't find them in any other state. You can literally read a newspaper through them. They're that thin. That's the kind of the colloquial name, because sobaquera means armpit, because you have to stretch it out to your armpit to make it like a pizza, right? And of course the armpit gives the flavor to the thing too. No, I'm just kidding. So. Not only that, this flour, the white Sonoran wheat, was used by Norman Burlock, who was an agronomist, who was basically contracted by the Rockefellers to develop a strain of wheat that would go on to feed the world during the Green Revolution. This is the same wheat that he used, okay? That went on to feed India and Pakistan during the big population booms in the 50s and 60s. The wheat berries are traditionally used in dishes like piñole, pozole de trigo, and today it's even incorporated into craft wheat beers too. I actually got to go up to Marana where BKW is growing out the white Sonoran wheat. They're actually the supplier for Barrio Bread, if you ever got bread there as well. They're a wonderful family. They're an old Chinese family of Tucson. Their family ran one of the old Chinese grocers in Tucson. So I think it's wonderful that they're still in this food heritage as well. Pinole, that was kind of like the survival food. It was like basically parched wheat with cinnamon and sugar. So usually you had pouches of that to like make like a little beverage to drink for instant energy. And pozole de trigo, that's what this is right here. Sonora is the only state in Mexico that makes a pozole. Guess what it doesn't have? Hominy. No hominy in the pozole, right? You would think, pozole, and even in New Mexico, pozole means the hominy corn. But they make a wheat berry pozole in Sonora. It's the only one. And what's curious about it is that it's typically served on May 15th, which if you follow the Catholic calendar, it's the day of San Isidro, who is the patron saint of agriculturalists. So they celebrate the wheat harvest in May, and they also celebrate it by preparing this dish. And in certain towns in Sonora, the practice is that you bake a big pot of the pozole de trigo, you put it on a table in front of your house, and you're not supposed to eat from your own. You eat from your neighbor, so it's a community building event too. So really cool as well. So I hope you like this presentation. If you want to learn more in place, if you want to learn more about these ethnobotanical traditions, I want to invite you to the Rio Sonora in Ures. We're going to go there for the Mexican Independence Day, which is an absolute joy. Magdalena de Quino is a great way to get your feet wet for just a day trip down there. And we're going to be going during the pilgrimage season. I've done the pilgrimage twice, so if you want to kind of get an idea of what the Magdalena pilgrimage is like, this is a great option for you. And how about after a long summer, don't you think you'd want to see that beautiful aquamarine, turquoise, refreshing water? So we got the San Carlos trip coming up, and then our UNESCO World Heritage Site right here in our backyard. If you watch PBS, Patty Hinich, she's going throughout this whole area right now. And then our super popular culinary tour. I think we just got 2 places left on that one. And then we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Anza Trail by doing a Basque trip to the Basque borderlands, going back to Anza's homeland in September of next year. So I want to invite you guys to that too. So I want to open up to questions. Thank you for your attention. I hope this was valuable for you today. So thanks. Questions, thoughts, commentary? Gail.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
great lecture.
Thank you. Uh-huh.
Where could one find that if they wanted to try it? And also the atole
Tapiro.
de
That one, atole de tapiro, is a little bit hard. You have to probably make friends with some old timers around here. For pozole de trigo, I know Mission Garden always typically offers it for the San Isidro Fest. If you guys find a restaurant in Tucson that serves it, let me know, because I would like to know. I've only had it south of the border. Yeah. Great question, though. Thank you. Uh-huh. Any other questions? Or Sally, please, yeah.
I know you didn't touch on it, but
Uh-huh.
the prickly pear cactus.
Yeah.
And the cochinilla bug.
The bug, yeah.
Color red. Can you just give us a little bit of background on that?
Sure, yeah. The prickly pear is wonderful because you get so many things from that plant. It's like you get a vegetable, you get a fruit, and you get perhaps one of the most expensive dyes that there ever were in the whole wide world, right? Sally's referring to, if you guys have ever seen a prickly pear, if you've ever seen that white fuzzy stuff that it has on there, it's basically a bug that creates this kind of webbing around itself to protect itself from the sun. And while it's creating that web, it's munching on the cactus. And if you take some of that white stuff off and you smash it in your hand, it's going to turn blood red. It's the red of Rembrandt, it's the red of Van Gogh, it's the red that transformed the world and when it became available in the 1500s. In fact, it went on to color the British redcoats coats as well. So that's Conchinilla, and that was basically, the Spanish came up to this area for the silver here in the Sierra Madres, but why did they go down to Oaxaca? The silver of Oaxaca was the red from the cochineal. That was the main cash crop down there. And then with the prickly pear, if you want to harvest the pads as a vegetable, you have to harvest them when they're fresh and tender, when you see the new growth of them in September, the new ones that are growing from the older pads. Those are the ones that you want to basically harvest to use in stir-fry dishes or eggs with nopales as well. And then the prickly pear, of course, there's so many different varieties, but they'd even do make alcoholic beverage in Mexico called colonche, which is a prickly pear fermented fruit beverage too as well. So, and one unique thing that I actually used to use the prickly pear down at Tumacacari for when I was doing historic preservation work is when we'd make the plaster. If you've ever cut cactus, out comes this like real slimy kind of mucilage, and we'd use that to help the lime plaster adhere to we'd add it into the lime plaster mix to help it adhere to the adobe too. So it's doing all boxes, tools, fruit, vegetable, medicinal, alcohol too for partying, so it's got it all. So great question. Yeah. So,
there's also electricity that flows through the prickly pear.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's a low voltage, not much amperage, but eventually we'll figure out
Oh,
how to
nice.
charge our phones from the prickly pear.
Yeah, Idaho has potatoes. We got the prickly pears down here. So if the solar doesn't work out, we can go to that. Cool. Good to know. Interesting. So awesome. Well, if you guys are too shy for a question, I'll be up here. I've got some literature here. We do a digital magazine you're welcome to sign up to. It's completely free. It's bi-monthly. We don't inundate you. So come up and say hi. All right? Thank you guys.